Hello and welcome guys, with new DLC right around the corner. Today we're going to be looking back at one of the latest additions to Assassin's Creed Valhalla, River Raids. Since being introduced to the game, they've been met with mixed reviews, some people seemingly loving them, others completely despising them, and although they are pretty repetitive in nature, there is some fairly satisfying rewards upon completion. Before we get started, don't forget to like and subscribe to be notified when more content is released, and if there is anything you would like to see covered in or other games you would like to see featured, drop them in the comments below. First of all, to gain access to the River Raid questline, you need to construct a barracks and River Raid dock in your settlement. Completing some of the lower level raids in the areas around your settlement will give you all the materials you need for their construction. Once you build your barracks, head slightly further along the coastline of your settlement to initiate a cutscene with Varn, who will explain who he is and what he and his raiders do. Once this cutscene is complete, you can construct the River Raid dock at the same location you just had that conversation, giving you access to the River Raid questline. There is a tutorial on how River Raid works you'll need to complete before you can access the rivers we'll cover in this guide. Once you've completed the tutorial, speaking to Varn will give the option of raiding one of two rivers. On each of these rivers there's 2 pieces of legendary armour and a clue for a further 2 remaining pieces of armour. In order to get the access to the full set of St. George's armour and the St. George's Greatsword, you'll need to collect both of these clues in order to access another river further north on the River Raid map. To begin with, your ship will only hold a small amount of cargo, so it's almost inevitable you'll have to make multiple trips to each river. However, you can limit this by being specific about your targets. The chest containing specific pieces of armour do seem to change location each time you hit the river, however they're never in the same settlement as another piece, so you will only find 1 piece of armour per settlement. They're always in large military installations and as a result are actually quite easy to come across. While heading up the river, look out for red flags outside of a settlement, or hover your cursor over the raid sign on your map, in which it will tell you if it is a military settlement, a civilian settlement, or a monastery. For the military settlements, you're looking for quite large fort-looking structures. If when you arrive it says small camp, you won't be finding any armour there. The armour can be found in large chests, similar to where you find the foreign supplies. It's worth bearing in mind that the more times you visit a river consecutively, the more reinforcements are going to be there, and the harder the raid will be. So alternating between the 2 rivers is your best option, especially if you're only doing this for the armour and the greatsword. Again, in the interest of speed, you're going to be wanting to use the focus ability in order to quickly figure out the location of the chest you'll need to open. For console players, that's clicking down your right stick. Doing this will show you the gold rings around the chest location, making it nice and quick and rather painless searching for loot. A word of warning, however, the harder these raids get, the more likely it is you will lose Vikings from your raid party, and it requires at least 2 people to open these chests and certain doors, so make sure you're keeping as many of them alive as possible. Upgrading your rations pack will greatly help you with this. The specific pieces of armour do seem to spawn in random locations, meaning the river and place I found the chest plate, you may find the bracers. However, for the full set you're looking for the chest plate, bracers, trousers, great helm, tower shield and cloak. As well as the pieces of armour on the river, you will also need to find a clue on each river. These are located in the monasteries, 1 located on each river. From what I can tell, these are in set locations and don't randomly spawn, so you'll find them in exactly the same place I did. The river exit clue is located in the church building at Assassins Monastery, located on the east side of the map. You'll be looking for a bunch of scrolls and paper on a table on the left hand side of the main church building. The 7th clue is located at the northernmost monastery on the river. While following the main path up from the beach, you'll notice it fork into 2 directions. You want to take the path on the right and follow it up to the big church looking building. You'll need to break the door down and fire an arrow through the gate to your left as you go inside. This will allow you access to the room where the clue is. You'll know when you're in the right place to find these clues, as they tend to be very heavily guarded. Room where the clue is. You'll know when you're in the right place to find these clues, as they tend to be very heavily guarded. There are also books of knowledge you can find whilst looting monasteries. These grant you 3 new abilities, so it is definitely worth deviating to collect these on your travels as well. The foreign supplies you collect can be used to upgrade your ship's looks and capacity for loot. This will allow you to raid for longer before having to return to your settlement to bank that loot. Once you've collected these clues, returning to the settlement will start a cutscene in which Varn deciphers the clues and grants you access to the River D, which is where you will find the remaining 2 pieces of armour. Again, looking for larger military fortifications, which luckily there are only 2 viable choices on this river, one to the far east and one to the most northwest side of the map. It is worth noting that the River D is much more heavily fortified than the previous 2 rivers, and while this isn't likely a problem for your own survival, it can cause issues keeping your fellow Vikings alive, so upgrading your rations pouch prior to this river is advisable. Final part of the River Raid questline involves you raiding at the fort at the very end of the River Dee. This is quite a challenging fort to raid, especially if you're playing on the harder difficulties. However, the reward is worth the challenge. You'll have to fight your way to the top of the fortress, keeping as many of your Vikings alive as possible. Luckily for this particular piece of loot, you won't need another person to open a chest with you. However, the sheer volume of high-level enemies would potentially overwhelm you if you didn't keep them alive for as long as possible. Also, just before the fight, you do need to break down a door, so the minimum of one other Viking will need to survive up until the start of this fight. At the very top of the fortress, you'll be greeted by a champion wielding the sword of St. George. All you'll need to do is simply kill him and take the sword for yourself. Depending how early on in the game you tackle this raid, it's easily one of the most powerful weapons you may have come across and can help you make light work of some of the earlier zealots and other elite enemies. Provided you've been pretty balanced with your allocation of skill points, it's easy enough to kill this enemy without putting yourself in too much danger. A headshot will deal up to 1/8 of his health in damage, so provided you have the ammo, he may not even get the chance to land a single blow. As the fight starts, he will try to attack you with an unblockable lunge, so ensure you dodge this first attack, as it can be devastating if you're on a relatively low health. Once you've defeated him, you can continue looting and return to the longboat, where you can return to the settlement and bank your loot. One final note to mention: if you do die without banking your loot, you will need to do the entire raid again to regain any items you may have found, so returning to bank your loot each time you find an armour piece may be the best option, especially if, like myself, you'll find yourself wanting to hurl your control through a window if you were to lose half an hour or so's worth of looting. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys. I hope you ever found this video helpful, and again, if you would like to see anything else featured, please do drop it in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more content. With that, I'll leave you with some gameplay from the final fortress on the River Dee.
Hey, can't do this alone.